Donald Trump isn't just broke, he's incompetent. Or is it something even more malicious than that? Check it out, leave your comments, ding the bell, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel. The New York Times last night, happy Monday. The New York Times last night laying it out. They've spent, apparently some quality time going through 20 years of Donald Trump's income tax returns and figured out that, he's a tax evading grifter. I mean, there's so much in here. I want to do a somewhat deep dive into this for a few minutes and just share with you what I've been able to learn about it and what I think it means, what it implies, where it all goes. Then we've got a handmaiden, a member of a Catholic cult that calls its women, or called its women, handmaids. Handmaiden Amy is up for the Supreme Court, and we've got some new information on that. We've got some new information on the election. In our second hour, Tony Schwartz is going to drop by. He is the guy who ghost wrote Art of the Deal with Donald Trump, or for Donald Trump. And he's got some wild news stories to tell. And in our third hour, Dr. Sam Metz will be with us here about Medicare for All. He's with this is hysterical. He is with a group called Mad as Hell Doctors, as well as PNHP, Physicians for National Healthcare Program. And Ellie Zupnik is going to be with us as well. Ellie is the comms director for Fix Our Senate. So a lot going on. But let's start at the beginning. Tax evasion. Well, is it tax evasion, or is it that Donald Trump is just a miserable business person, an incompetent business person? I mean, it sure looks to me like it's more the latter, although there's plenty of the former. I mean, his claiming a $72 million tax deduction and the IRS saying, oh, hold on, Donnie, not so fast. And then his living large on that money that the federal government gave to him. It's bizarre. But here's the chronology that we know. Back in the day, Donald Trump stole hundreds of millions of dollars, what in today's dollars may be $1 billion, from his father's estate. This was established 2 years ago in a massive New York Times investigation where they laid it all out in detail and won a Pulitzer Prize for it. His niece is suing him right now for this, for stealing this money from her father, because he screwed not only the IRS, which is you, me, and our nation, in doing this, but he also screwed his siblings and their children. And then he took this, roughly 500 million bucks that he got from his daddy and went on a buying binge. He bought casinos, he bought airlines, he bought steak companies, he bought a vodka company, he had Trump-branded games, his own version of something like Monopoly, he had a fake university, he had all these companies, he bought a winery. Virtually all of them failed. And so he experienced multiple bankruptcies, 5 or 6 times. He had to declare bankruptcy over and over and over again. And he was wiped out. I mean, Trump was apparently, if all these reports that, that lay this stuff out in some detail, and particularly David K. Johnston's reporting that now is increasingly showing up over at rawstory.com, Trump might have been on the verge of homelessness had not NBC picked him up, and he cut a deal with Mark Burnett at NBC, or I guess maybe Jeff Zucker was involved in that somehow. The guy who runs CNN right now, that he would get half the profits from the show. I don't think they thought the show was going to be profitable, but he ended up walking away with another $400 million from being on The Apprentice. So he's got a new pile of money. He's rescued from bankruptcy. He gets a new pile of money, and he goes out and buys a whole bunch of new stuff again, because that's what he does. He buys properties around the world, and he cuts licensing deals in some of them. He's building things. He's, mostly golf courses, right? Scotland, Ireland, Doral. And now they're not doing so well either, in part because he's an incompetent businessman. They've been losing money for years, but also this year, particularly bad because of the virus, which might have something to do with why he's willing to kill several million Americans with his herd mentality strategy. if only they will go back to playing golf and going. I mean, this is why he was playing golf yesterday. It's his way of saying, hey, you can do this. Go to my golf course. Right? And so now he's massively in debt again. Over $400 million in debt. He's burned through all the money from Celebrity Apprentice and picked up a couple $100 million in debt. We don't know who he owes that money to. It could be Russian oligarchs. It could be Saudi oligarchs. It could be Emirati oligarchs. It might be the same people who loaned Jared Kushner $1 billion just last year, right? Who knows? But right now, what is fairly obvious is that for the second time in his life, Donald Trump is on the verge of bankruptcy. Now, when his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, hit that wall last year with his 666 Fifth Avenue property, you'll recall when his dad got out of prison and Jared was just a young pipsqueak, Daddy gave Jared some advice. He said, son, buy a newspaper, buy a fancy, fancy building in Manhattan, a high-status building, and marry a beautiful, wealthy woman. You do those three things, and you've got a ride to the top. And you will clean up the stain from Daddy going to prison for fraud. And so Jared bought the New York Examiner, I believe it's called. It's this obscure newspaper in Manhattan. He bought 666 Fifth Avenue and paid a couple $100,000 more for it than he should have. A couple $100 million more for it than he should have. Excuse me. He paid over $1 billion. Well, he didn't pay it. He borrowed over $1 billion to take this building on, and he married Ivanka Trump. And, when the money ran out, Jared was in deep trouble, and this was before the coronavirus. He goes to the Middle East and starts begging for money, and nobody wants to give him the money. And all of a sudden, Qatar controls a big investment fund, and all of a sudden Saudi Arabia is like blockading Qatar, saying, no, you can't have food. And Qatar suddenly says, hey, Jared, here, have some money. Or an investment fund that's heavily funded via and through Qatar. And we don't know what role the UAE is playing in this, and it's just a mess. We still don't know how much Trump and Kushner compromised American security, how much they sold us out for in exchange for that $1 billion for Jared. I'm guessing historians will figure it out, but Trump is now going to have to come up with hundreds of millions of dollars over the next 3 years. And the question is, which dictator is he going to borrow it from? Has he already worked out a deal with some oligarch someplace? Does this explain why he's constantly deferring to hardcore right-wing autocrats, whether it's Vladimir Putin or Mohammed bin Salman? I mean, it's pretty breathtaking. This also, I think, provides some really solid proof that in 2016, Donald Trump wasn't seriously running for president. He was playing the Republican Party and all those rubes out there who were showing up at his MAGA rallies for suckers. And then on top of that, this $421 million that he owes somebody according to his taxes, we don't know who that is. Well, the general counsel of the former general counsel of the FBI, the chief of the criminal fraud section of the U.S. Department of Justice, a fellow by the name of Andrew Weissman, who was one of the lawyers and investigators for Robert Mueller, says he thinks that Trump owes that $421 million that he's going to have to pay back starting next year. He owes that to Russia. But who knows? Former RNC spokesperson Tim Miller, basically just says, "Hey, it's the rubes. He's a populist fraud who suckered the rubes." I'll share that quote with you on the other side of this break. And